Is one truly free in the 21st century? True, we are free to pursue the profession we want, what we're passionate about, or maybe just a job. We're free to make an income, and we're free to go after and purchase the things we desire, material things that we hope will fill in some void and never do, which leads us to another purchase and another purchase and an endless cycle of purchases, filling a bottomless void. That's one way to exist. But I wonder how many people really know freedom. Our bodies are free. Our minds are free to think. Are our souls free? And what do we think? I was just reading a book, Thinking for a Change by John C. Maxwell, and I came across an interesting quote that says, by U.S. Senator S.I. Hayakawa, who was a professor, college president, and U.S. Senator, he said, learning to write is learning to think. You don't know anything clearly unless you can state it in writing. And then, unquote, it follows up with the sentence, as you shape your thoughts, you find out whether the idea has potential. So, a fundamental thing that we learn early in life is to read and write. And to put our thoughts into action. See, most thoughts never see the light of day, honestly. The brain never stops thinking. We must have a million thoughts a day, if not more, conscious or unconscious. Now, like I said, most thoughts never see the light of day. It is somewhat of a common knowledge that if you write something down, you're more likely to do it. It's more likely to become an action. Like, for example, making lists. People make lists so they don't forget what they're supposed to do. And just to add some order to the never-ending barrage of things that we have to get done. Reading and writing, like I said earlier, is fundamental. But that statement is really underrated, by which I mean people don't fully understand the depth of that. Reading dramatically improves one's vocabulary, one's thinking ability, thinking flow, sentence structure, as does writing. Writing down one's thoughts, ideas, can be the first steps into turning a thought into something that can be birthed into the physical world. Writing it down begins its journey into the physical form. Like when the sperm meets the egg. I think that's what putting thought into word is like. Like the Bible says, in the beginning there was the Word. That's naturally the step that follows conscious thought, putting it into word. Now, if you're like me and you come from a background where college was not the common mosquito, if you're like me and you come from a background where college might have not been the common influence scene, it was like a thing of dreams. People tell you to do it, but didn't tell you how to do it. To me, it was this huge idea, this overwhelmingly huge idea that terrified me. At one point, I did sign up, but I never, and I did begin physically went, but I stopped going and never completed, unfortunately. But that's besides the point. If you're like me, someone who comes from a background where speaking big words doesn't get you uh, positive feedback or the right kind of attention. Family thinks you're being, our family thinks you're trying to be something that you're not. It wasn't well received. Carrying around a notepad and a highlighter and a book, it was a common thing for me, but it was quick to get ridiculed. And why is that? So, back to what I was saying, writing and reading, those are the fundamentals. When we grow up, first things we're taught, but then it's, for some reason, it's like there's this myth that you're that stops with school, or you're not supposed to do it in your leisure time, which is, like I said, a complete myth and contrary to truth. But that's how it was received socially for me growing up. And unfortunately, there was a time when I was completely concerned and absorbed in the idea of what others thought of me, what I looked like. So I didn't make the most of my gifts earlier in life. But I don't beat myself up about that, because I know that I did the best that I could with what I had. But even up until recent years, somehow I found myself around people who thought it was a subject of ridicule to see a person with a book. I love to carry a good book with me. If I get bored with the conversation, mundane as it could be, I could just get lost in my book. Some people just don't understand, what do you get out of that? Or because they don't partake in something like that, it was subject to ridicule, and then you see those kind of personalities that are what I call toxic and like to poke and make fun and ridicule and put a negative light on people who want to increase their education, knowledge. I was most definitely, most likely in the company of people that did not have my best interests at heart and were not too good for me. But nonetheless, it's absolutely good for the human being to write down their thoughts and to read, to increase thinking, to broaden your horizons, to learn more than what you know from growing up, what you were taught. In the beginning of my recovery, as a recovering addict, as a recovering human being from a limited and stifled upbringing, in my recovery, one of the first books that I found and read was Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox. That book was the beginning of restructuring my thought process. It really broke down the idea that our thoughts do create our reality. Now, I had heard it before, the phrases and the ideas that you think, therefore you are. I think, therefore I am. The law of attraction. All those thoughts and ideas I had heard of and I believe. But what good is the law of attraction if you're vibrating at such a low vibration that you can't attract anything but more negativity, but more heartache, more problems? And that's where rewiring one's brain comes in. People think you can just think a good thought, perhaps a desire, what you would want, and that's going to manifest itself into existence. And that's not the case. You have to believe it, live it, demonstrate it, express it with your whole being. And anything contrary to that will negate and void that initial desire or idea that one had in the beginning. So it's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant epiphany to understand what the law of attraction is. Thermodynamics, the law of the universe, just the law of existence. But what good is it? It's like leading a horse to water, but the horse can't drink. Giving the man a fish, but never teaching him to fish. The idea quickly, easily loses the initial spark. And that's what happened to me. But so, Sermon on the Mount. It's a book about Jesus's teachings. The Sermon on the Mount, where he goes over the Beatitudes. I don't know if I said that right. Where he states, "Blessed are the poor, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall see God." I can't quote it all. Barely can quote one line. However, it breaks Jesus' teaching. Also, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, the kingdom come. Breaks it down line by line. And it takes Jesus' teaching from just organized religion religious way of thinking, so that we're not thinking of it literally, but the way he intended it metaphorically. The Bible is not literal. That's another discussion altogether. The way he intended it, and how it could have been misinterpreted by so many people, the Pharisees, religious leaders, organized religion everywhere. But Jesus came to speak to the brokenhearted, the broken-spirited, the lost, so that he could share the light with the hope that mankind could find his own inner light and be prosperous. There's lots of bugs in the woods. And have an abundance of prosperity. And what that book, as he breaks down the different teachings of Jesus, the main theme of the book and what he really highlights is the fact that our thinking is what manifests everything in our life. Like I said, in the beginning was God, and with God was the Word, and there was nothing before God. And that verifies and completely aligns with I think, therefore I am. Like I said before, in the beginning was consciousness, and then it was spoken, and then life was spoken into being. Creation was spoken into being, into existence. So the Word came right after consciousness. And then, boom, existence into physical form. What's the point of all this? Back to basics. The most simple of things, as in the most simple of hobbies and acts, is reading and writing. Like I said before, is most fundamental, essential, and critical for life to evolve. For a person to take themselves from an uneducated, in the eyes of most, poor, material-wise, not poor in spirit, and hopeless individual, can take someone from that level, a low vibration, but when the tools are sharpened, the tools of the spirit, healing begins and occurs. And those are all choices that an individual has to make, that they want to heal and that they want to set a higher standard for themselves. There's nothing wrong with writing things down. Now, back to this sentence. So now that I got my point across, that I think, therefore I am, and after you think, then you write down, and writing helps put things into physical form, into action. So there's nothing wrong with carrying around a book. If you're ever around people who think that there's something wrong with you, that you're funny for carrying a book or a notepad with you, you're with the wrong people. Find your people. Those are not your people. In society, we are trained to be robots just to get the next check. Unless you landed your dream job, got a impressive college education, and congratulations. I'm genuinely happy for you, and that's the stuff dreams are made of. materialistically. But for the rest of us, one of my favorite quotes is, slow and steady wins the race. The rabbit thinks that he's got the race in the bag because he's faster. Get everything accomplished quick. But then he makes the mistake of being frivolous with his time. While the turtle knows that though he's slow, he's wise, he's smart. And from being frivolous and taking naps, and according to the story, being frivolous with his time and being unwise, the rabbit loses the race. Much like life and the rat race. Do I want to win a race? Not at all. I don't want to take part in a rat race. But there is a purpose to this thing called life. And it's not a financial or a material end. My purpose that I found is finding your inner light, going within, finding what is your true contribution to humanity and how you can begin that, and then going after it. So like I was saying, this sentence in this book, the quote, where he says, learning to write is learning to think. You don't know anything clearly unless you can state it in writing. So the human being has a million thoughts a day, and we may conceive of every idea in the book of how to improve our situation. Well, I want to do this, I want to do that. We can be split, divided into multitudes of different personalities. Well, this side of me wants to do this part of me wants to do that. We can be at war with ourselves. We can be so unsure of which step to take. Don't be against trying something new. Write something down. Open up a notebook. And we hear it time and time. We hear it all the time. Don't tell me you've never heard anyone say, hey, get a journal, write something. It might sound cliche. It might sound repetitive. It might to some sound dumb. What am I going to write for? I don't have any interest to write. Exercise your mind. Once you put some of those thoughts that go round and round in your head down on paper and you read it back to yourself, then you can build on it and you can actually look at it and see, was that thought realistic? Can I build on it? If it wasn't initially realistic, can I turn it into something? Can it grow into something? Can we change it? Can we edit it? I keep reading this sentence because it makes more and more sense. You don't know anything clearly unless you can state it in writing. Learning to write and learning to think. Learning to write is learning to think. So how can you think clearly if you don't practice writing? For me, when I was young and very troubled, writing was my first positive coping skill. And I didn't even know that's what it was for me. I just knew that it made me feel good and I had a knack for it. And I enjoyed expressing myself and putting it down, documenting it. That's not by accident. It might not be everyone's cup of tea. Some people have more of a mathematical brain. But you still have to write it down, don't you? Find your form of expression so you can get those ideas out and you can build on them. To be successful, to begin to be successful, one has to reprogram the conditioning that society has hardwired our brain with from the beginning. They start early. Everything you learn from the age of a toddler to 6, 7 years old, that's kind of what builds the foundation for a person's character. And the messages that the government and society put into most citizens' minds are subliminal and are to just be another puppet, another robot in society, in consumerism, in the patriarchy, to build onto the economy, to get the American dream. But we can do better. Gaia is evolving. Our planet Earth is evolving. We, her inhabitants, are evolving with her. Solutions are found every day by the thinker, by the writer, by the individual who dares to think outside the box and think beyond himself and dream of a better tomorrow. Don't be timid to play around with your ideas, to have a dream. Before it can be a reality, it has to be an idea. But after it's an idea, put it into words. Once you get the steps in motion, you don't know how far you will get until you start taking those steps. The planet is healing. She is absorbing incredible amounts of light as she is evolving. And like I said, we are evolving with her. To heal our planet, we must heal ourselves first. Do something every day, no matter how small, to better yourself so that every day you can be better than what you were yesterday. We deserve it as human beings. Our children deserve it. The planet deserves it. I believe that we're going in a good direction, regardless of what the news says, the media says. I look at my life and I know that right now it's better than where I was last year. So don't be so quick to overlook the simple things. Be a thinker. The thinking and the writing will move you into doing and open the doors to put those thoughts into physical form. Your ideas are not by accident. And every idea is worth something. There's no worthless ideas. So yeah, I think I got my thought out. Thank you very much. I'm Fem.Divina, and this video is one beginning a series of healing, light, and love module I'm doing in like in the interest of humanity to heal ourselves. Thank you. Namaste. Blessed be.